Hi again. My name is Ann Kroom. I'm an employee owner at InSource Solution and also its president and CEO. And I'm serving as your host today for the 10-part Extreme Factory Makeover webinar series. In our first two episodes, we examined the Operational Efficiency 10% Challenge. We started right at the beginning with what's possible and where to start if you're just now thinking about creating a great plan for improving OEE. And we also talked about why OEE projects fail. We covered how to create the appropriate project scope, namely, how to evaluate your organizational readiness for making technology or process modifications, the implications for your workforce depending on the scope you chose, and last but not least, the secret sauce needed for pulling it all together for execution and beyond. We introduced to you the notion of scalable approach to your OEE projects. And we talked about how to set the right objectives and the implications for focusing on acquired versus accessible versus actionable data. And also in these two episodes, we gave you some real-world examples for you to ponder. And I don't know about you, but I always love learning about what other groups are trying. Now, if you missed either episode 1 or episode 2, you can watch the studio recordings on our website. And that brings us today to episode 3. Today, Rob Banczyk, Vice President of Sales for InSource Solutions, is here to talk about a very popular topic, cost. You know, a lot of suppliers are afraid to talk about cost, but our goal is to allow you to make the most informed decision possible, and that obviously includes project cost. So we're going to talk about not only the variables that impact cost and the investment ranges you should be thinking about, but also some ways to calculate an ROI to justify your project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rob. Please enjoy episode 3.
My name is Rob Banczyk, and I'm the Vice President of Sales here at InSource Solutions. But maybe more importantly, when it comes to operational efficiency, I'm an employee owner. And as such, operational efficiency is equally important internally and externally. So as a man passionate about operational efficiency for our clients in manufacturing, I'd like to talk to you in today's episodes about the 3 costs of operational efficiency. The cost of doing nothing, the cost associated with the project itself, and the internal cost of justification. But first, I want to start with just a little look about what improved operational efficiency does for you. And I want to tell you this, that it always results in bottom line savings and improved earnings. It always results in reduced capital expenditures. Now you can look at it from 2 perspectives as well. You can look at it from a good times perspective, meaning when you can sell more than you can make, or you can look at it when it's not so good times, when you can make more than you can sell. When you can sell more than you can make, there's all kinds of gains from operational efficiency, from reduced downtime, to increased use of your capital, to better PM scheduling, to higher yields, to better performance, etc. All of those are savings for you. In the not so good times, when you can't sell more than you can make, you still have the ability to cut back on shifts, reduce the number of lines that you're running, reduce your overtime expenses, and maybe identify some underperforming assets for either mothballing or sales. So let's take a look at costs from 2 perspectives. The cost of doing nothing, or what I would call the status quo, and the cost of the actual project. The cost of doing nothing. First of all, dependent on a couple of considerations as we look at scope, is, as I said, can you sell more than you can make? And if you can, the cost of doing nothings are decreases in efficiencies, no good controls over startup, changeover, sanitation. Your downtime is probably running away. Your speeds are probably not where you designed the equipment to run at. You're getting poor yields, and you're probably paying for overtime. But when you can make more than you can sell, the cost of doing nothing is really along the lines of, can you be more effective? Can you run, or are you running, more lines than are required? Are you using more shifts to get things done that you could do in less shifts? And are you doing the right targeted maintenance activities? So let's take a look at now the cost associated with doing the project itself. Of course, cost from a technology perspective is scope dependent. And by scope, I mean a couple of things. First of all, are you creating scope that just allows you visibility into how well you're doing with operational efficiency for the purposes of checking lines and shifts and SKUs? And if so, does it include things like startup and changeover and sanitations and PM activities? Or you have to ask yourself, are you creating scope around visibility and into why or why not you might be doing well? Will you be providing this information to people so that they can take necessary actions? Will you be providing this level of information to determine root cause and do your 5 whys? Will you be integrating it with things like your maintenance systems so you can do PMs rather than on time on actual run hours? Does your automation system understand the cause of downtime? Are product SKU and performance information available to you in the system? And as you answer questions like that, it will give you more ability to ask why, but it also increases the scope of the technology project. You also have to take a look at scope from a people and process perspective. There is opportunity available based on scoping, as we saw in episode 2. So for instance, are you integrating the use of this data into actionable information? And Scott talked about the cost of acquiring the data, the cost of making it accessible, and the cost of what type of action you plan on taking. Is this a generic continuous improvement project that you have going on? Are you truly capable of doing the right level of root cause analysis? Will you be integrating this meeting or this information into your daily production meetings, into your shift turnovers? Will you be driving changeover improvements? When you look at that level of actionable information, it impacts the way your people act, and it impacts the processes that you have in place. And those processes could be simple manufacturing processes like changeover, or it could be the process for how you consume the data. And once you consume the data, how you take action on that data. In episode 2, Scott also introduced to you the idea of the maturity matrix. Is your organization ready for this data? Are you integrating this data into your systems to create actionable information? For instance, are your people engaged and ready to consume the data and take action? Do you have the right processes in place to ensure that the data is acted upon? And are you organizationally ready to change that you ensure that you prevent repeated occurrences of the same loss? And you can look at all of those aspects in reference to the maturity matrix that Scott introduced last week. Additionally, I'd like to add another variable to this. So we saw the cost of accessible and the cost of actionable data. We saw the impact that people and process have on organizational readiness. A new dimension to consider is this idea of scalable. Are you looking for a point solution right now that just fulfills an immediate need? Are you looking for a framework that's designed to support some clear long-term business objectives around continuous improvement? Or are you looking to implement a sustainable program where operational efficiency is just the first step, and in order to do that, you would like to fully examine the technologies, the roles and responsibilities, and the process changes required to get a high return on your investment? So dimension 1, actionable information. Dimension 2, organizational readiness. And dimension 3, the scope of what you're looking for into the future. So to answer cost, I need to look at all 3 of those variables. There's an intersection between point and framework and sustainable with your technology needs. Is it based on number of lines or equipment? Is it based on the number of places that your operator need to supplement downtime information? Is it based on tailored reporting to help you with shift turnovers, shift handoffs, sanitations, setups and startups? Is it integrating into your people and process for production meetings and root cause analysis? Does your maintenance team have the required information to do proper PMs? And will you be managing action items going forward? All components of your cost. So what is the cost? Well, I can tell you this. When you look at the maturity matrix, when you look at actionable information, and then you weave in the idea of point, framework, and sustainable, that you can do an operational efficiency point solution for between 25 and 75K. You can implement a framework solution for between 50 and 100K. And you can actually do a sustainable program based on operational efficiency for someplace between 100 and 300K. And of course, there are exceptions to this rule, as there is with any scope. There's anomalies based on organizational maturity and IT requirements. And of course, there are other issues like automation and HMIs that affect these numbers. So what does that really mean practically? Well, I can tell you, just a few weeks ago, that I helped estimate a point solution for a client that was looking to do nothing more than identify the amount of time they spent in a running condition with the amount of time they spent in a down state. And they wanted to leverage current systems to capture those two states alone. And there are many ways to do that. So as I stated earlier, let me tell you that in this case, this point solution was under $12,000 and could be implemented in less than 2 weeks. But at the same time, sometime back in the early part of September, I was part of a team estimating a framework solution for a rolled goods manufacturer. And while it's not $12K like the point solution, for about $72,000 and about 8 weeks of time, they could get a framework solution focused on operational efficiency, implemented for one major line in their plant that had 4 pieces of equipment, that had 2 locations for the operators to interface with downtime and root cause. Downtime logic had to be built in their PLCs. We were integrating to a database for SKU-based rate information so we could better tell the performance of their line. We had some custom reporting to do to help integrate into their production and reliability-centered maintenance meetings. And there was an effort on our part to help ensure that the data was being consumed, acted upon, and occurrences of same loss would be minimized. That work took about 8 weeks, or we're estimating it to take about 8 weeks, and for about $75,000, they're able to get that implemented. At the other end of our scale, when we look at sustainable, with organizational readiness and actionable data in mind, we've recently implemented a system which was approximately $240,000 for a food and beverage manufacturer, and it took us about 14 weeks to get it done. That framework solution, the key component of what we implemented, went across 5 lines for this particular customer, and it was fully integrated with SAP for SKUs, for changeovers, for rates, etc. It was integrated into their production meetings, their shift turnover meetings, their continuous improvement meetings. It was integrated into their weekly and monthly steering team meetings, and metrics were rolled up to the corporate environment. We helped them define their failure triggers because they were different for each line. We helped them create the right root cause analysis procedures. We helped them identify their failure triggers. We helped them look at what changeover looked like on different lines, including sanitation and setup. That work, again, took the better part of 3 months and about $240,000 to do. Now, each of those have different durations of project implementation time, and each of those have different costs associated with them. But if you remember, that was only one of 3 costs that we've talked about. So that's a look at the practical implications of cost related to the project. Now, I can tell you, for example, number 3, when we look at cost justification, that this particular customer was able to pay for their system in under 6 months. So as we move from the cost associated with the physical project itself, let's talk a little bit now about internal cost justification. So we introduced to you the concept of point solution, framework solution, and sustainable solution. When we look at point solutions, it is relatively easy to get return on your investment. And as you can see by the graphic now, there is work that you put in from the time project number 1 starts, but then everyone celebrates. And at the time of celebration, most people forget the effort now required to sustain that gain. And when you do that, there is always an undermining set of energy or undermining work going against you. So you do get a gain from a point solution, but more than likely that gain will fade away over time. And there is also some psychology out there that says when you put a point solution in, just bringing visibility into operational efficiency will help you improve, commonly referred to as the Hawthorne effect. Now, if you'll take a little bit broader look at this, and you'll give some consideration for what we call the framework solution, where we look at a business goal, a long-term business goal, but we design the point solution around that. You can see at that same place where I talked about the undermining work going against you, that when we look at a framework solution, we'll put some reinforcing work in against that at the same time. So we'll take this improvement and we'll begin to see some behavior change in our organization. And as such, with that extra work, you're able to continue your improvement, sustain that improvement over a longer period of time. And of course, when you look at internal cost justification, your biggest return on investment by definition is in the sustainable program. So if you'll take a look at your organizational readiness, that maturity matrix that Scott spoke about, and if you'll underpin this whole idea of operational efficiency with actionable information, and you apply that against a sustainable framework, you're able to take project 1, that first attempt, create some efficiency gains, put effort in them to sustain, and begin project 2 from a new launching point. So if you were at an efficiency measurement of, say, 60%, you gain 10 points through your first project, you begin your second project at this point from a 70% efficiency number, and so forth. You can put your effort into project number 2, increase your efficiency once again, and begin project 3 from a new baseline. In the end, what you're looking for in most places we go that are looking for sustainable programs is world-class operational efficiency. If you are trying to achieve 85% OEE, which I believe could be unsustainable over periods of time, you do need to look at this from a staircase perspective. You need to focus on project 1, put the effort in it required to maintain that improvement before you begin project 2. For you Six Sigma people out there, you may look at it this way. We spend a lot of time doing define, measure, analyze, and improve, but we get pulled off our projects before we do the control step. Sustainable programs are all about implementing that controlled step, taking that improvement, making it a standard, taking that standard and making it a routine. Once it becomes routine, you have a high percentage chance of sustaining that over an extended period of time. Each of these 3 projects that are laid out before you have that sustained component to them. They push you on your journey to world-class manufacturing. So internal cost justification itself, let's look at it from the same 2 perspectives that I introduced earlier today. You can look at it from a return on investment in good times, where you're unleashing the hidden capacity of your plant, where you're increasing volumes, you're increasing efficiency without major capital investment. You can increase the number of products being produced when they can be sold through increases in uptime, increases in yield, increases in running design rate. In bottom line, 10% more available time means 10% more product produced. You can also increase your operational efficiency by being more effective in maintenance. Today, it's common practice to do preventive maintenance activities based on calendar time. A good operational efficiency program will expose running hours on each of your major pieces of equipment. If we did nothing more than do our PMs based on running hours instead of being based on calendar time, you will increase your efficiency by percentage points. You also have return on investment when you're in those not so good times, when you actually cannot sell more than you can make. But with the right data, the right processes in place, you can cut back to only those shifts that are required. You can cut back to only run the lines that are necessary to run to get the product out the door. You can reduce overtime expenses, you can reduce waste, you can identify underperforming assets, underperforming lines, underperforming production teams, and in the end, decrease your cost, which of course will increase your efficiency as you measure it by dollars. Now, another way to look at cost justification is return on net asset. We invest heavily in manufacturing today, and if you look at return on net asset, or what some people might term RONA, in good times you're still unleashing that hidden capacity, but for every 25% gain you get on a line, if you have 4 lines, you've actually created yourself another line. You now have the ability to run the equivalent of 5 production lines with no capital investment. The return on the net assets that you had before this project is now 25% greater. So it's one way to measure it on return on investment. It's another to look at it from a return on net asset perspective. And you can also look at RONA in those not so good times. If you gain that same 25% efficiency on the 4 lines that you have today, you still have created that 5th line, but maybe you can cut back a production day. Maybe you can take off a week during the holidays, and when you take that week off, maybe you can do some better maintenance activities. It might allow you to completely mothball that line. It might allow you to completely mothball a shift. The bottom line is you're reducing your operating costs while improving your efficiency at the same time. So if you're new to operational efficiency, or even been practicing for a long time, in the last 20 minutes, I hope I put a lot of information in front of you. I tried to look at the cost of doing nothing, status quo. It's costing you to run your lines inefficiently. It's costing you by yield waste, raw material waste, performance waste, downtime waste, etc. I tried to talk to you about the cost of doing the project itself from a scope perspective related to technology, from a scope perspective related to organizational readiness, and from a scope perspective, actionable information. And in the end, I tried to give you a few examples around how you could internally cost justify this. You could look at what most people use, return on investment, or you could take a look at return on net asset. In the end, I hope I was able to clearly tell you that there are 3 different costs associated with operational efficiency. Attacking all 3 of you will increase your chances of you being successful on your journey to world-class manufacturing.
Thank you, Rob. That was great information, and it gave us all a lot to think about. Specifically, in this 3rd episode, we hope you walked away with a good idea of what costs to expect and how to justify your OEE project with a compelling ROI. We hope you'll join us again next time for episode 4. Now, in episode 4, we've assumed you've done an absolutely bang-up job justifying your OEE project. And I'll be darned if that project hasn't been approved. So now we'll be giving you some considerations for building that detailed project plan, and quickly. What steps should you take to mitigate your risks? So go to our website now and sign up for the 20-minute episode 4. Finally, we know 10% improvement is possible. We've seen it. But results do vary. And to have an in-source consultant visit your plant to see what type of results are attainable for you, contact us at the number on your screen or at insource.solutions. I've even included Rob's extension. Now, you can even tell him I sent you. And finally, I'd like to remind you of our 10% challenge contest. If you already know or just suspect that the 10% improvement results are within reach for your organization, and you just don't have the budget to get started right now, we have an answer. Between now and April 20th, we have a contest underway to win a free 2-week engagement from InSource and Wonderware, a $45,000 software and services value. You can register to win on our website. So we invite you to embrace the 10% challenge and take that first step toward improved productivity and profitability. See you next time.